A lot of times lesbians get shit for being lesbians. They get shit for saying, I am a woman who will only love women. They get shit for saying that. They get attacked for saying that. And it angers me because I can't help but just feel the riskiness of just believing that women will always naturally be available to men. It's something that I have an impossible time not hearing. It's time for the lesbians. In fact, wait. Let me go get an appropriate shirt for this video. I'll be right back. Let me know if this is queer baiting. Okay. Is this queer baiting? I made this for all of my non-monogamous sapphics out there who just want to advertise, you know, that you love your girlfriends. I have a lot of sapphics in my audience, and I think that if there is a letter in the acronym that I've always historically felt the closest to, it's always been the L. You know, a lot of my initial feminist educators were lesbian women. I have an aunt who has had a roommate for a very long time, the same roommate, and they're raising a kid together, you know, and she kind of raised me low key. When I first came out as trans and I was in the middle of, you know, pursuing HRT, she actually gave me some of her pills that she was taking for menopause because she was like, I don't need these, girl. I've always had such a love for sapphics, for lesbians explicitly. And this very, very popular video that I've kind of wanted to make commentary about did come into my feed, and I thought that it would be particularly relevant for this Pride season. So let's watch. I'm going to be working on some artwork while we go over this.
That Renee Rapp is like, you'll never catch me dating a man. Hold space for her in 10 years if she goes, oops, I met the love of my life and it's this man. I didn't mean to.
Full-blown crying, had a meltdown. Like, oh my God, I'm gay. I was like, damn it. Did you not hear me when I said I was a lesbian? Did you not fucking hear me? Christ, this feels so good for me right now, and I don't want to go buy something that doesn't feel correct.
So I'm going to tell you why I get a little pissed off for lesbians, like the base reason why. And lesbians, feel free to correct me and criticize me. I am a straight woman. I must remind everybody. I have to apologize for that frequently. I get frustrated for lesbians because, especially as like a non-monogamous straight woman, I listen to so many men talk about their little fetishes and fantasies for lesbians. And I've had an incredible amount of men say to me that they've had relationships with lesbians, that they've been welcomed into the fold by lesbians. They made an exception for them, yada, 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 yada. There have literally been times where I was really into a guy, and the moment he started telling me about the lesbian that let him hit, I was like, all right, never mind. And I get frustrated hearing that shit because what I know is that a lot of the times these men get off on the idea of a lesbian changing their mind for them. And that is frankly, just a goddamn lesbophobic fantasy. I'm not going to say it, but it's de-breaking. It is, in my opinion, one of the very, 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 very normalized aspects of lesbophobia, which is so violent, right? This idea that, you know, lesbians will eventually, with the right man, open themselves up, because the conclusion, the subtext is a woman's body always belongs to a man. Its natural state is that it belongs to a man. And when I heard Betty Who say this bullshit, I have to be frank with you. This was one of the most disappointing things I've ever heard someone say. And I'm not like a parasocial person. I don't really like love celebrities the way that I think a lot of other people love celebrities. I sort of looked at Betty Who because I remember like listening to Betty Who's music when it was like kind of indie, you know, back in the day. And I was so disappointed to hear this. I was like, damn, why does she feel so comfortable saying that? And the reason is homophobia. There's a video made by a bisexual woman that started a lot of conversations about lesbians. And I felt the need to kind of like jump in there as a lesbian defender to be like, hey, lesbians are not just resenting bisexual women. They are just trying to be with people who are like them. In fact, I'm going to insert that video in this video just so that people see what I'm talking about.
Lesbians are not lesbian for lesbian exclusively because of like a resentment for bisexual women. It's more so because many lesbians want to be in relationships with women who have a similar relationship with lesbianism. And I suppose that's really hard for you to understand if you're completely disconnected from lesbianism. And I'm a straight woman. I'm only vaguely familiar with this because I like to read and I like queer theory and I have predominantly sapphic friends. But it's more like lesbianism is like a thing to and of itself. And a lot of women only really want to be in relationships with women who share that similar understanding. And a lot of times when lesbian women listen to bisexual women speak, especially like the way that Paris did in that video, it sounds so outside of that. So outside of that. And not even like exclusively because you're sort of saying these obviously homophobic things, but it's like you speak as if you don't really love women, right? It's like you speak as if you couldn't ever love women in the way that lesbians clearly do. Now, at least I'm not making the argument. No one's saying that lesbians can't be biphobic. But I think a lot of you need to recognize that for a lot of lesbians, the reason why they want to date explicitly other lesbians, it's because they want to date someone who understands them. Why is that important? Because lesbians exist within a culture that is overwhelmingly lesbophobic, that often makes the argument that lesbians are not actually in relation with each other, that they are not actually in love with each other, that relationships are not valuable unless a man is involved in one way or another. And what that does is create a very isolating space for lesbians to exist within. So a lot of lesbians really want to only date people who acknowledge that, understand that, and are willing to exist within that space with them, right? And so I think a lot of you need to recognize that even when you come into the conversation about less for less dating and you say, oh, you're only not dating me because you think I might date a man, like maybe that might be there, but that's still kind of like an understanding of it that centers men, right? Because it's not all about men. In fact, I would say it's explicitly not about men. And that's the point.
There's like a version of lesbian shit that's known through the media. And then there's like the version of lesbian shit that's only really accessible to other lesbians and probably other people within the acronym. And it's such a different world. Lesbians are not overwhelmingly exclusionary of any group within the LGBT, yes, including bisexual women. And no, most lesbians are not gold star, right? Like lesbians often have had previous experiences with men. Some lesbians identified as bisexual for a very, very long time. It is that they recognize that they love women and only women that they started to adapt the label of lesbian. And a lot of that had to come from working through compulsory heterosexuality that, you know, for some people is an outgrowth of trauma, frankly. For a lot of lesbians, when they state, I'm a lesbian specifically, not sapphic generally, that is something that they really like to be respected. And a lot of lesbians opt for being with people who understand that. And I personally have a very hard time taking real issue with that. But, you know, I am not sapphic, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt, I suppose. A lot of times lesbians get shit for being lesbians. They get shit for saying, I am a woman who will only love women. They get shit for saying that. They get attacked for saying that. And it angers me because I can't help but just feel the rapiness of just believing that women will always naturally be available to men. It's something that I have an impossible time not hearing. I think it's a beautiful thing if someone eventually recognizes that maybe they are bisexual in one way or another, but it is kind of strange to speculate, and it is kind of odd to hold space for someone's sexuality, especially when you're not involved, right? You're not involved. You got your experience, and that's a-okay. What the fuck does that got to do with her? What the fuck does that got to do with her? I've always hated the everyone's a little bit bisexual stuff because some of us really aren't, you know? And I know I'm not. And that's not through lack of opportunity. Trust me, I pull. If I was into women, lesbians get such a bad rap for being exclusionary. And I think that that is another form of lesbophobia. You know, not every lesbian is Ariel Scarcella. Shout out to Ariel Scarcella. I recently did a video where I talked about how she tried to kiss me once. Go check that out on my Instagram. I went to an event this past weekend. It was a house event. It was like at this bar that was split in half. And on the other side, there was a lesbian event happening. There were so many trans women in the room over there. Like there were several that I just like organically ran into. There was a wide range of gender expression. And that's the thing too. People don't understand that lesbians often have a complex relationship with gender, right? So, you know, some people from outside of the community, they see studs in masks and, you know, they see like different gender presentations that are under the lesbian label and they think like it's so confusing, but it's actually not because it's just commonplace. Now, over on the house side, I was kind of like, where are all the Black people at? High key, like where are all the Black people at? This is a house event. Where are all the Black people? And there was someone who came in from the other side, a Black girl, and she was high key like, where are the Black people at? Even on the other side, right? She had just come in from Atlanta and she was like gorgeous Black woman, like just absolutely gorgeous Black woman. And everybody wanted her. Everybody wanted her. I felt like I was like with the hot girl at the function, frankly. Anyway, let's move on to the next video.
Lesbians have the highest reports of domestic violence. Wrong. You people are purposefully misinforming others about that study in which lesbians in relationships with other women were asked, have you ever experienced domestic violence in the past? And they said, yes, when I still dated men. Get your misogynist brain out of your ass and read the damn study, you fool.
I really appreciated this video because this is a very commonly touted statistic, often used by people who try to discourage lesbians from being in relationships with other lesbians. And it's frankly really gross that I've seen it used more and more and more. I see it used quite a bit by, especially, guess what? Red pillion men who want to discourage women from being in relationships with other women. You know, lesbian relationships are incredibly threatening to the patriarchy. They essentially are relationships that function without a man completely. And I think one of the reasons why the Betty Who's of the world exist is because they have a hard time envisioning an existence without men. And I think that that's like the divide that a lot of lesbians have between themselves and bisexual women. Most lesbians will indeed date bisexual women, right? Like it's not like that's not going to happen. But a lot of lesbians just want to be in relationships with people who aren't interested in men at all. They don't want to be hanging out, watching a movie and listen to you talk about, you know, this hot guy on the screen. They want to be with women who love women. And to me, I can't think of like a good reason to be opposed to that isn't just homophobic. So basically what I'm saying in this video is leave lesbians alone.
Please.
Leave them alone. Back up. Back away. Anyway, on that note, I will talk to you guys next time. I would love to hear, of course, from the lesbians underneath this video. Let me know how you guys feel about many of the things we talked about in this video. If you guys want to share some thoughts about the whole Paris situation, feel free to. I will say that's probably played out at this point, but I thought that it would be helpful for me to add in my little videos about that because, you know, I think more people need to say this. I think more people need to stand up for lesbians and recognize lesbophobia. One of the things that happened as I was talking about this online is that I noticed how frequently my content that was explicitly about lesbians got removed. Yep. A lot of my content that was explicitly about lesbians got challenged and ultimately removed. So there is indeed, I think, a movement against justifying the existence of lesbian relationships. I do think that low key, some of the shit that we end up discoursing about is a psyop. I don't want to, be too dramatic about that, but frankly, it is suspicious that we have so many discourses about lesbians being mean and not wanting to fuck men. I think that that is weird. I think that that is not a coincidence. I think that as homophobia ramps up, there's going to be more and more propaganda about how lesbian relationships just ain't that great. But I will personally always humanize lesbians and the idea that a relationship can exist independent of a cis man. And you should too. Anyway, on that note, I'll talk to you guys next time. Like I said, I want to hear from the lesbians specifically and the sapphics generally. Let me know how you guys feel about many of the things in this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time. As per usual, I want you guys to stay hot and introspective, and always remember, never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye.